I'm Mo Rocca, and I'm excited to announce Season 4 of my podcast, Mobituaries. I've got a whole new bunch of stories to share with you about the most fascinating people and things who are no longer with us. From famous figures who died on the very same day, to the things I wish would die, like buffets. All that and much more. Listen to Mobituaries with Mo Rocca wherever you get your podcasts.
At Salesforce, we're all about asking more of AI. Questions like, where's the data going? Is it secure? Are you sure? Are you sure you're sure? Get answers you can trust from Salesforce at askmoreofai.com.
Hockey fans, are you ready to brave the wild? With me, your host, Paladino Joey. Brave the Wild is available on the sportstuff.com, iTunes, Stitcher, and Double Twist. It's great to be back on board once again and finally today here on Brave the Wild. This is State of the Wild 2018. Once again, back for State of the Wild, the annual show, the Megasode, all that good stuff. Not sure how long this one's going to be. It'll be probably a little bit because of, we have a new general manager. His name is Paul Fenton. It almost looked like it was going to be Tom Fitzgerald for the longest time because he made things awfully interesting with owner Craig Leopold. Apparently their personalities mesh well, and, well, it would have been interesting. Either way, you get a former NHL player as your general manager again. The Wild have had a former NHL player as their general manager, their first general manager, and that didn't go very well. Doug Risebrough, we talked about him extensively over the years. He couldn't draft, he couldn't tell a draft pick from his children, I think. I don't know. At least anything after the first round, being Doug Risebrough. Fletcher, an improvement, but still mediocre, kind of like going from Ghostbusters 1 on the NES, how horrible that was, to Ghostbusters 2, which was a little better, but not much, that type of thing. On the Nintendo, remember how awful that game was? Some of you that are old enough to remember that back that far. That was Doug Risebrough. Hopefully Paul Fenton is a vast improvement. Of course, connections with Mr. Craig Leopold, Nashville Predators, all that. He was the assistant general manager for the longest time. I almost want to jump into him right now, but we'll keep that for segment number 2. We'll get through the season wrap-up first. That way you just get through that. You just get through that first, and then we can kind of talk about the future. We talk about the past, then we talk about the future, and then we talk about the present with the whole postseason situation and the Stanley Cup champion Washington Capitals. Well, I'm glad they won. I'm happy for them and all that, but man, Las Vegas, what an amazing run. But of course, we will get to that in segment number 3 and all that. Little interaction as well with the whole, MVP, biggest disappointment, biggest surprise of the season and all that. But let's jump into the season review pretty much right here and now. Other than, real quick, I'll just say, again, the delay and all that. I probably would have had a show specifically for Paul Fenton before, but I was very busy with the lawn cleanups because of the very late snowfall. In fact, the last show I did, there was still snow on the ground. It was melting, but it was on the ground. And I was in Brooklyn Park. Now I'm in Golden Valley. So lots of stuff going on that delayed me from returning behind the mic. So I am back in Golden Valley again. Of course, not in the same location. So obviously, I'll just leave it at that. Back in Golden Valley again, so that's cool. Nothing's perfect about any place, but it's an upgrade from where things were. Better apartment, this and that, better location. Okay, get the idea. Just explaining the hiatus there for a little while. The Minnesota Wild 2017-18 season in review for the most part. Well, things just did not start out that well. Of course, you get Kyle Quincy and all that. He came in to be, okay, yes, I can play right shot, and then he didn't want to play right shot, and this and that, and he was just kind of in the way, and he wasn't very good. He had some decent seasons with Detroit previously, and other teams along the way. He also brought in a guy by the name of Mr. Daniel Winnick, of course. Yep. A very nice addition. A lot of people didn't like him that much because he's not this great scorer, but he certainly showed potential of it at times. Mostly brought in to be a gritty fourth line forward who can play some third, but mostly fourth line. Very strong defensive player and just really good on the puck. Very strong and also showed some skill. And I'm like Daniel Winnick. A major problem that's been brought up, of course, with the Minnesota Wild, and that, Michael Russo's talked about extensively on local shows here in town, is that, well, just about everybody on the team was a left shot. Just about everybody, particularly the forwards. Now, right shot, left shot, all that with defensemen, that's kind of evened out a little bit over the course of time, thankfully. And you have prospects like Luis Belpedio and maybe Brendan Mennel coming up to the NHL rankings at some point. Luis Belpedio has a pretty good shot of making the NHL roster next year. Certainly not a guarantee. Nate Prosser is what he is. You got Seattle looming in the next couple of years. We'll see what happens at that. But, of course, we don't know the name or anything, and nothing's completely official. But Seattle's going to be the next NHL franchise. And then we'll see what happens. Who moves to the Eastern Conference, if anybody. We'll just get to that when we get to that. I'm losing my mind. I'm just excited to be back behind the mic again. Do you blame me? I mean, it's about bleeping time. But not a great start to the season. The Wild can't beat Detroit in the opener. It's just like, come on, like nothing's going well. You can't beat Carolina. You can't beat Detroit or Carolina. Then we beat Chicago. You got all excited, but really a nasty month. Can't beat Columbus. Winnipeg, of course. Lose 1-0 to Vancouver. Blah, blah, blah. A very mediocre month of October and all that. Zach Parise still not back with the whole back situation. He came out during the preseason, the intros and stuff, and you could still see he's still hurting and all that. So then it's like they put that on delay, and the recovery was continuing, the official back surgery and all that. So eventually he would finally come back around Christmas time. Things improved a little bit into November with a couple impressive wins, shutting out Philadelphia 3-0, beating Nashville 6-4, this and that, and as usual beating Buffalo. But Wild can never beat New Jersey. Stunk against Winnipeg, that 7-2 thrashing. Yet somehow we sweep the future Western Conference, Campbell Conference champion Vegas Golden Knights. That's pretty impressive. It was nice to sweep Philadelphia back-to-back in a home and all that, and sweep the Montreal Canadiens. That was pretty impressive. But generally speaking, again, still not the best month ever. Another 2-0 loss to Corey Crawford and the Blackhawks real early in the month of November. The Wild improved a little bit, but still, you're not seeing the team we saw a year ago and all that had 106 points. We move into December. You can't beat Edmonton. That was a disgusting loss on the 16th on a Saturday afternoon. Oh, those matinees, I hate them. I think everybody hates them, but I hate them more. You have a home with Nashville, which is a lot of fun after Christmas. You had the victory over Dallas just after Christmas. That was fun. 4-2 victory. You beat Ottawa, this and that. Chicago, you lose twice. Not the best month. Luckily, the Wild had a little more success against Calgary this year than last year. Last year, the Calgary Flames swept the Wild right out of town. The Wild continued to sweep San Jose this year, which is surprisingly, and much to the chagrin of my friend Chris over there. Chris starts in Northern California, and I'm sure Chris Porter as well in Idaho, but he's more of a Penguins fan than a Sharks fan. The Sharks are his second favorite team, just like Calgary's my second favorite team. But games like 5-0 Winnipeg and all that, that's much later. That was the Wild's season-ending loss. You got that floating and right in my face here, and I don't want to see it. You get swept in the little Florida two-step on the 22nd, 23rd. Merry Christmas, Wild fans, I guess. Yeah, it's just kind of, you look at this and it kind of sums up the season. Up and down, injured, this guy's hurt, this guy's back, this guy's a turned ankle, this guy has this guy has that. Niederreiter was plagued with injuries through the season. Coyle had another broken bone, and he's the only right shot forward, which is kind of funny. That's where you start to think that, when you talk about Fenton and the Wild are going to probably make some kind of a splash here via trade, a hockey trade, not a draft pick type of trade. That's what they're talking about, and we'll get into that in segment number 2. That's what I'm really excited to talk about. But we got to put a bow on this season. But no, the whole shot situation, this guy's right, this guy's left, and it's like the whole team is left shot pretty much, and that can kind of drive you absolutely up the wall. Kind of leaves you like, what do you do? Makes you crazy. Charlie Coyle has a right shot, and of course, everybody else, like Tyler Ennis, like Yul Eriksson, you could go on forever. Greenway, Koivu, Cunnin, again, they're all left shot, and this may have been a point of friction between Fletcher and Boudreau. That may be why, if possibly, Boudreau might have had something to do with Fletcher leaving. But then again, you know how coaches are with general managers. We'll talk about that too in a moment. Is how there was a little shakeup with the whole assistant coaches and all that. So that becomes a plot thickens type of situation there. But just about everybody in the forwards is a left shot. I mean, you could go on forever. Koivu, Stahl, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, Zucker's a left shot. And you might have guys like Parise playing out of position on the right wing. And it's just, well, okay, he can do it, but it's not the best. It's not the best idea having a left shot on the right wing. It don't make sense, Joe. So possibly the guy that's most likely to get traded out of the forwards is Nito Niederreiter, not Mr. Coyle. And Niederreiter's contract, well, yeah, it's long, and that wouldn't make me cry too much if we were to move on from him. But again, plagued with injuries during the season, so his statistics not quite as sexy as they might have been the year before. Obviously, Charlie Coyle is a guy that's frustrated a lot of people. You got the whole Las Vegas situation. Would we have left him available? Should the Wild have left him available? He was rumored to be in the trade instead of Tuck and Eric Hall at the time. But that's the end of the day. It would have been, he was rumored to be involved in that whole trade. And unfortunately, well, things went the way they did. Instead, Coyle, who knows, maybe he would have done better in Vegas. But that just kind of leaves things where they are. Blah, blah, blah. Matt Cullen, it was nice to have him back. But what a slow, awful start to the season. He started to slowly pick things up like an old stock, slowly moving back up again after a slow start. That's pretty much what Matt Cullen did. But then again, the drop-off after March was noticeable, but still a factor into the postseason. And good for Matt Cullen, as he was the first guy to actually score for the Wild against the Winnipeg Jets, which is kind of funny. But frustration there mounted during the course of the season. The whole left shot situation, though, definitely a frustration. A guy like Sam Anas, who never got to see the light of day for the Wild, extremely frustrating. And that's what kind of kept you going there and kept you wondering what's going on with this Wild team. Why can't you call up Sam Anas the whole damn season when he's having so much success in the AHL? At least give him a crack, a couple, 2-3 games. Maybe he clicks, maybe he works out, maybe he doesn't. You gave Steeler a chance, and he was a wonderful addition after the Brodin injury. And that's kind of how things go. He was a nice story as the season progressed continuously there into 2018, as that's where we're moving now. Zach Parise's returning and all that. Month of January, a bit better for the Wild. The 7-2 loss to Colorado wasn't fun. Yet another loss to Calgary, which we've had many over the course of the last few years. You beat Buffalo, you beat Florida. Nice home wins for the Wild. You even beat Winnipeg as the Vikings are about to play the New Orleans Saints the next day. You get to see Blake Wheeler do the skull chant with the fan base. That was pretty awesome. Wild lose to Vancouver, and, well, the Vikings won that game, but it was scary as hell. A snowy day, a fun day. You beat Tampa Bay, the best team in the East at the time, on the 20th, 5-2. That was pretty awesome. Then you finally lose to Pittsburgh after having massive success against them. You finally beat Columbus on the road. That was a huge win to wrap up the month of January as you move on and on and on through the course of this. Of course, I'm not going to talk about every game, but it's generally speaking just a nice start to the season. Of course, the Vikings had lost now at this point, but the Wild continue their sweep of the Vegas Knights in a back-to-back with Vegas and Dallas. You beat Vegas 5-2 in Xcel Energy Center. Wow, that was fun. But then a 6-1 loss in Dallas. Oof, that was harsh. You lose to Arizona, and that was a huge indicator of how frustrating the season could be. You lose to New Jersey again. Big shocker, you lose to Washington. The Wild never beat the Washington Capitals. Extremely frustrating. They keep sweeping the San Jose Sharks. The Wild success rate against Anaheim after a good start under Boudreau has gone pear-shaped as you move into February again. But the Wild struggles would mount during the course of the season, of course. The more success than failure, but certainly at the same time, again, good is not good enough, and that's basically something I agree with. That's something I agree with when you talk about Mr. Craig Leopold and all that, with his frustration during the course of the last couple of years, and ultimately what may have gotten Chuck Fletcher fired, probably the whole Tyler Ennis trade. It's just like, it was kind of like enough was enough, and of course Kyle Quincy moves like that. Just not going to get the job done. But that horrible trade with Marco Scandella was not going to get it done. Mr. Steeler did debut against the New York Rangers, and I do remember that very well, on February the 13th. Kind of a scary day to start your career, but a nice 3-2 win by the Wild, and an awesome debut for Nick Steeler. Only 10 minutes, and about 10 and a half minutes, but still very, very encouraging. Olofsson had been playing very well in Brodin's stead, but then you get Nick Steeler up. He finally gets a crack at it, and I don't ever want to see him play in the AHL again unless it's some kind of a rehab stint, and you hope he doesn't have to go through that at all during the course of time. Hopefully he can stay healthy. You see the minutes increase, of course, but of course with Ryan Suter out, you're going to increase when you're a left-shot defenseman, and of course Suter being a left-shot defenseman, that's a lot of minutes to fill. Brodin got most of the minutes. He was the top guy, but then Steeler moved up to the second pairing with Spurgeon, and things went fairly well with those guys during the course of the last few games with the Suter injury. Brodin, of course, missed extensive time early, and that's when Olofsson got significant minutes and started looking more like an NHL defenseman. But by the end of the year, Mr. Boudreau wanted nothing more to do with Gustav Olofsson, unfortunately. We'll see what happens if he gets traded in the offseason or what happens. But again, another left shot defenseman. And when you have Steeler and Soucy, I'd rather have Steeler and Soucy than Gustav Olofsson. Obviously Gus, as we could call him, or the Goose, as I like to call him. Much higher draft pick than the other two, but eventually you got to make a decision on who's better. And to me, Steeler and Soucy are better. Steeler for sure is better. Soucy hopefully is better. It's not complete yet, and that's what will be decided during the course of the summer and training camp and such. We'll see what happens. And sometimes jobs just change. They change over during the course of the season. A guy starts strong and then doesn't keep it going. The other guy picks it up and takes over. We'll see. But moves will be made. Gustav Olofsson, don't be surprised if he's on another roster of some sorts, AHL or NHL, starting off the season in a different organization, as they say in the NHL. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. But Nick Steeler, an extremely positive addition during the course of the season, and it makes you feel a lot better about Chuck Fletcher, of course, because he did make good moves. One of the only good moves that was remaining on the roster for Doug Risebrough was Marco Scandella, but that was, of course, one of the very few guys that ever really did succeed under Doug Risebrough. Just little free agent signings here and there that worked out. Pascal Dupuis really early. That was cool and all that, but yeah, I mean, other than a couple of draft picks working out at the top of the draft, major failures. And then, of course, the last few years, pretty much nobody made it, including the first-round draft picks. That was, yeah, okay, I've gone over that a million times. But, Fletcher did a better job. I mean, Nick Steeler, Soucy, guys like that. So, but still, not the best. Still, it was mostly the trades, I think, that killed Mr. Fletcher's career with the Minnesota Wild, rather than the draft. The draft was okay. There's stuff to be encouraged about, like the greenways and such. But again, nice to see Steeler emerge from February 13th on, and he was a factor well into the postseason, and that was absolutely fantastic. Much later, you finally got to see Luis Belpedio, but then again, that was only for one game, yet he magically got 2 assists in it, this and that. Very encouraging, though, to see Steeler progress the way he did, and now I'm kind of rehashing things here. We head into March. Last year was a much harsher March for the Wild than this one. The Wild beat Vegas again. They officially complete the sweep, and they finally beat the Arizona Coyotes. You finally beat Vancouver, yet the Wild, for some reason, this year can't beat Edmonton. Whatever. I mean, we were better against Edmonton last year when they were good, when they could have possibly gone to the Western Conference Finals last year. But then, I don't know. Edmonton looks like Edmonton again, the crappy team that the Wild always beat, and the Wild did not beat them. You opened the month of March, though, horribly. A loss to Arizona, 5-3, 7-1 demolition against the Colorado Avalanche. Yuck. Turning into a pretty nasty matchup for the Wild. Colorado Avalanche in Minnesota. Very tough future between those two. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for the Wild. We may end up missing the playoffs next year, but we'll see. It may end up happening that way, but it depends on who gets traded, what happens, and again, who improves. St. Louis, Colorado, Dallas, even Chicago might have a nice rebound. Who knows? And I don't want that to happen, but we'll just have to wait and see. I don't know. Just it seems like every month looks the same. I mean, you win one, you lose one, you win 2, you lose 1, you win 3, you lose 3, you win 1, you lose 2, back and forth. That's kind of the story of the Wild season. Things were kind of evening out. The Wild wouldn't end up well above 500 and all that, but still, I don't know. Frustrating season, and not the best finish either. You end up splitting the last couple of games. You end up clinching the playoffs and all that. You finish well ahead of teams like Colorado and St. Louis. That was the good part. You end up getting in the 100-point range again. You finally beat the frickin' Oilers 3-0. That was awesome in Xcel Energy Center. Then you lose the back-to-back in California, Anaheim, and Los Angeles. Not the best games. Then you move north a bit and you beat the crap out of San Jose. That was quite surprising. I did not expect that. A 6-goal flurry for Minnesota. You got to see Soucy debut in the final 3 games of the regular season against Anaheim, Los Angeles, and the San Jose Sharks. And of course, Soucy getting hurt late down the stretch there at the end of the month, or at the end of the season here. Heartbreaking for the Wild, a 3-0 win over the Edmonton Oilers. But kind of is what it is. By this point, Soucy had already debuted for the Minnesota Wild. But, man, as the month of March would actually see the end of Ryan Suter, the end of the month of March anyway, the 31st. 4-1 loss to the Dallas Stars, a very costly loss, of course. Things were looking good for the Wild. Things were looking positive. We just beat the Stars 5-2. Suter had 2 assists in the game, and then, bam, the guy hits the wall. It's Ryan Suter, and he's not getting up, and you think, that's kind of weird. He's just kind of kneeling down, and what the hell happened? He just kind of went into the wall a little bit, but it can't be that bad. Oh, God, yeah. And then you look at the angle of the angle of the ankle. Tongue twister, right? Yeah, the fibula broke, but then the tallest, too.
This is beyond belief!
And yes, we did talk about this earlier and at the time and all that, but the tallest is that little, it's basically like a ball socket in your ankle. And you know how ball sockets create motion for any type of device, like a monitor or who knows, anything. Could be anything, like your, parts of your car, this and that, the ball socket. Well, that's what the tallest acts like, and just like the little scaphoid bone in your wrist, which I broke, which was great. That kind of thing, it takes forever to heal, not just because of the location and how crucial it is, but because the blood flow is different there. Normally a bone takes 6 weeks to heal, 6 to 8 weeks or so, usually 6 though. It grows pretty fast. It heals back in place pretty fast. When I broke the 2 bones in my arm way back in 92, took about 6 weeks. Still hurt like hell for a year. But then you have the little bone, the little tiny scaphoid. You think, oh, that's just a little one. It'll heal, but it's in a crucial spot and less blood flow, and it takes months to heal. And guess what? That happened in 1998. Guess what year it is? 2018. It still hurts. Yeah, so hopefully Suter, though, obviously had a more detailed type of surgery, though, to prevent any type of permanent damage there. And hopefully Suter will return 100% again at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if there's aching there long-term later on in his life, but we'll see. But obviously mine was a little different situation. We'll leave that alone. That's not necessary. You probably don't need to know. But yeah, Suter, again, hopefully a full recovery at some point. He's been on crutches. I was like, he's standing. But yeah, crutches. I still could not apply any pressure in that area for a while yet. Eventually he'll be able to again, and then hopefully get some strength back. And yes, then he'll be able to skate again. And oh yeah, well, he's pledged that he will return, just like he said at the Paul Fenton press conference. So we'll see what happens. It's like he's standing with crutches, not standing on the foot. So yeah, Ryan Suter, speedy recovery, hopefully still to this day. That was against the Dallas Stars. Yeah, tough situation for Ryan Suter and all that. And, of course, that's where the Wild had to bring up Carson Soucy right away. You bring up Sealer to replace Brodin during Brodin's injury. Then, ultimately, Sealer's so good, he ends up knocking Olofsson out of any type of hope of playing. And, yeah, he has a significant amount of success. Then Soucy gets extended playing time, plays throughout the playoffs, though he gets sat down anyway, scratched in the final playoff games there when things didn't go so hot for him in the postseason against the Winnipeg Jets. But very few teams did well against Winnipeg until the Vegas Golden Knights played them, which was quite a shocker. That's segment number 3. Frustrating injury for Nick Steeler. Please, not Nick Steeler. But frustrating injury for Ryan Suter, and we hope that he will indeed return. And we'll see what happens with Paul Fenton, how relationships do get put together with the players and the coaching staff and all that as we continue forward. So far, things look positive between Boudreau and Mr. Paul Fenton, but there was a change in the coaching staff. Of course, John Anderson on his way out, and Paul Evison brought in. Paul Evison did have experience with Boudreau for an extended period in Washington, so they know each other well, and they do like each other, but Mr. Anderson was Bruce Boudreau's best friend. So, yeah, but Boudreau says he's okay with it. It kind of is what it is. It's tough, but he's okay with it, that type of thing. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be extremely interesting to see how this gets put together. Evison was the head coach of the Milwaukee Admirals, which were the minor league affiliate for the Nashville Predators. So the plot thickens. Put 2 and 2 together there, and the plot thickens. Paul Molitor brought in to be on the coaching staff for Ron Gardenhire, that type of thing. But that's none of my business. I sip this coffee. Yeah, that would be great. No, I'm kidding. I like Bruce Boudreau. I hope he's here for a long time. I actually like him quite a bit, but I don't know. Business is business, right? It kind of is what it is. I don't even want to talk about the playoffs anymore. It was a bad matchup. Things didn't start well, and things didn't end well. The Wild did win one of the games, which was nice. Made things kind of interesting, winning the third game. Staying alive, staying alive. And then, well, things dropped very dramatically after that with a couple of shutouts. Yeah, a couple of shout-outs to the Winnipeg Jets. The 2-0 loss in game number 4. That was kind of all she wrote, and it was extremely frustrating. Hellebuck was hella good for the Winnipeg Jets. Pardon the pun, but I had to say it, I guess. And 5-0 loss to the Jets was kind of like, yeah, well, that was kind of like, Fletcher, that game isn't why you're gone, but just the whole success level of this team is why you're gone. Some not good free agent signings, some good ones and some not good ones. Some not so good draft picks and some good ones, this and that. But mostly I think the trades are what did Fletcher in. Most of his trades stunk, to be quite honest. I mean, how many good trades did Fletcher make? Nick Leddy and all that for Cam Barker. No, that's not good. I talked about it extensively on the last show about a month ago. Check it out, this and that, if you haven't yet. Yeah, I mean, too many trades. Obviously, the Scandella trade was kind of the nail in the coffin for Fletcher. That's why his contract was not renewed, because it would have been renewed if I keep calling everybody Mr., but if Craig Leopold wanted to keep Chuck Fletcher, things would have gone in that direction last summer, and they didn't. So he was kind of on a trial basis going into his 9th season with the Wild, and, well, trial and error. I guess it was error for Chuck Fletcher. It is what it is. Paul Fenton will be introduced, has been introduced, no kidding, as the general manager of the Minnesota Wild, and we'll, as fans, get introduced to his style very, very soon, which is more aggressive than Chuck Fletcher. But you got to sit and hope that he's better at making trades. So far, in his time with Nashville, it appears that he has been better, and the draft has been well, as he took care of the draft from 03 to 08. Again, we'll get to that soon. I keep teasing to it because I'm very excited and encouraged and hoping for the best here, as this team still has a chance to be good with a couple of significant moves here and there. The tweaking will be significant tweaking. It's not like, Kyle Quincy just kidding. Let's bring in another Kyle Quincy type. He's a little more steady and he plays this position and this and that. He'll stabilize things. No, it's going to have to be a lot more significant tweaking than that. Somebody like Niederreiter or Coyle gone, or both, this and that. We could go on forever. Maybe even Eric Stahl on his way out, with hopefully a decent amount of return for a 40-goal scorer. A guy that could easily still get 30 for his next team, or the Wild next year, depending on how that direction goes. So, as we wrap things up, let's pass out the awards, and I'll also check out what you had to say on the Facebook page, which is, of course, facebook.com/Brave the Wild. The Twitter account is @BraveTheWild. For me, the most valuable player for the 2017-18 Minnesota Wild is Eric Stahl. 42-goal season, very valuable, though I was very disappointed with how his season finished. Once he got to the 40 goals, it was just kind of like, okay, I made it, and looks like we made it, and all that, and then you're sitting around waiting, and okay, I guess that's all he's going to finish with is 42 goals. Not bad or anything. That's freaking awesome. I mean, it only happened one other time for the Minnesota Wild, but how about a little bit of scoring in the postseason here? Okay, Hellebuck was great and all that, and Winnipeg is smothering, and they're physical, and they're just better. They're bigger, stronger, faster, blah, 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 blah. I think that's a song somewhere. Daft Punk or something like that. Not quite, but close. But basically, just put it together, and that's what Winnipeg versus Minnesota was. And Eric Stahl was not much of a factor in the postseason. The whole top line stunk for the most part among everyone else. Oh, dang it. And, of course, it didn't help that Parise broke his sternum. But apparently he's pretty much fully recovered, strong, healthy, feeling good again. So, awesome. Zach Parise had a renaissance, and it was good, and we hope it continues. Awesome. Now we need Suter to come back healthy. Pray to God for that one, indeed. Suter had been such an Iron Man. And off it goes. Off it goes for now, unfortunately. Eric Stahl, most valuable player. Again, awesome season. What a fun year watching Eric Stahl. Again, his finish is what frustrates me, and I'm sorry to jump into the negative, but that is a part of it. That you have to mention that. You can't finish. You have to write the whole book. You can't just skip the final chapter. The final chapter was disappointing. But all the chapters before that were awesome, and thank you, Eric Stahl. You were the most valuable player for the Minnesota Wild in 2017, 2018, and well-deserved. Without a doubt there is no doubt. And, of course, just in general, the 76 points as well. You can go back with Eric Stahl. Mikael Granlund was definitely a candidate. He still wound up with 67 points, missed a few games, still wound up with 21 goals, 46 assists, awesome moments, but inconsistent, and invisible in the playoffs, just like Eric Stahl. Invisible in the playoffs. Jason Zucker, 33 points during the 33 goals, 64 points. Whew, boy, no Las Vegas for him in terms of leaving him unprotected, right? After the nice resurgence he had last season. Ended up having a 33-goal season, but invisible in the playoffs again. Suter had a 50-point season, which was awesome. Actually, a career high, if you can believe it. Matt Dumba, 50-point season, a career high as well, of course. As last year he got into the 30s, which was nice. And then you saw him eclipse 40 and just jump right all the way up to 50. Mikko Koivu, only 45 points during the course of the season, only 14 goals, was invisible time and time again. And you extend the guy for 2 more years. That's another reason why Fletcher probably should go. I don't know, $5.5 million for Koivu for 2 more years. I would not mind seeing him come off the books and get him traded at some point. But I don't know, I might offend some Wild fans by saying that. But 45 points. Thank you for playing 82 games, though. That's awesome. Spurgeon missed an extended period of time, which hurt his numbers. He might have had 50 points as well. Spurgeon and Coyle both stuck at 37. Spurgeon in only 61 games, 37 points. That's not bad. Coyle, 37 points in the 66 games and all that. So that leads you to the biggest disappointment of the season, and that's Charlie Coyle. It's you, Charlie. It's you, Chuck. Hey, Chuck. Yeah. 37 points. I know you were hurt, this and that, but then you were healthy, and you still wound up with only 37 points. You just barely scraped double digits, and this is a guy that some people thought might be a 30-goal scorer in this league. 37 points, man. Nito Niederreiter, who played hurt pretty much the whole year, still wound up with only 32 points, but 18 of them were goals, and he was a factor here and there, had some multiple goal performances and all that. Disappointing season, but I can't call him the biggest disappointment. Charlie Coyle was the biggest disappointment for the Minnesota Wild this year, along with the injuries to so many guys. Again, Spurgeon missing a ton of time, Brodin missing an extended period. He didn't progress that well. Tyler Ennis, he stunk and all that, and only 22 points in 73 games. But did you expect a whole lot out of Tyler Ennis with his production at Buffalo? Not really. You were hoping, but it didn't happen. Of course, he will be an honorable mention anyway because he was a 50-point type of guy, was Tyler Ennis, but as a forward. Nothing spectacular, but good enough. 50 points is supposed to be better. Joel Eriksson's production, scoring-wise, was disappointing, but he started showing signs. But it also doesn't help when the guy's stuck on the fourth line and the third line here and there, never gets any power play opportunities. Wound up with 16 points. Started showing some signs later on. Chris Stewart was the only other right shot forward on the Minnesota Wild roster. And, of course, he's just Chris Stewart. He started awesome like he did the year before. And, well, yeah, whatever. Whatever. Wound up with 13 points. So somebody basically telling me I don't know what I'm talking about and why am I so salty saying Chris Stewart's the kind of guy I don't really give a crap about. Well, that's why I don't really give a crap. God bless him. He looks like a fun guy and all that, but whatever. I mean, great. He had a couple good games at the beginning of the season. Woohoo. Luke Cunning's ACL was heartbreaking as well. Another left shot, of course. You might as well just call him the Minnesota lefties. But, yeah. Luke Cunningham, though, heartbreaking to see him get an ACL and all that. Hopefully he'll be ready by October, this and that. And boy, you want to see what he can do out there. So far, I've not been all that impressed with Luke Cunningham. He didn't break through much in Iowa. He had a hat trick. He had a hat trick last season at the last second. It was kind of funny. In a couple games he played last season, the year before, I'm trying to say, in this short little stint there. Like how other guys, Mr. Belpedio got a short stint there, just coming out of college, this and that. Greenway, same. Well, Greenway came right to the NHL. But Cunningham, this season, he was there the whole year. And just kind of, he started showing signs later on, but still hasn't really broke through yet. Very, very young, nice career ahead of him. But some guys, they start off right away really well. And other guys don't. I mean, Joel Eriksson, he showed serious signs of something down in the AHL, which tells me I think there's something there, and his role needs to improve, needs to be increased with the Minnesota Wild this coming season. And I hope Mr. Boudreau can do that for Mr. I gotta stop saying that. I have a bad habit there. For Joel Eriksson. Just say Joel Eriksson. I'm losing my mind. Matt Cullen is at his final season, 22 points, 79 games, 11-11 for Matt Cullen. 11 goals, 11 assists. Is he done? I think he's done with the Wild. Talk is that he is done with the Wild. Nothing personal. It's business, that type of thing. Both Fenton and Cullen, this and that. It's nothing personal. It's business, that type of thing. He may end up with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He may end up with the Nashville Predators, or he may end up back in Minnesota as a father of hockey players, as a hockey papa. That may be the next step for Matt Cohen. So we'll see what happens there. I think he could be in the media if he really wanted to, but does he want to? That's up to him. We'll just have to let him cross that bridge when he gets there. Justin Kloos, don't be surprised to see him as a fourth-line center for the Wild at some point next year, but we'll see. He only got one game in during the course of the season. Krzysztof Bursky on his way out, traded, blah, blah, blah. Kyle Rau didn't get much action with the Wild. Greenway showed some signs, some really nice passing skills in the time he was out there. And he had a pretty exciting goal against the Winnipeg Jets as well. It was his first NHL goal, but postseason, not regular season, so you won't see it in his regular season numbers. Only one assist in the 6 official games he played in the regular season, but there's something there with Greenway, and it's very visible. The strength, the confidence, hopefully will increase during the course of the summer, and all that. So the biggest surprise during the course of the season, I think, is a pretty easy choice. In 22 games, 4 points, but the stats obviously don't mean anything when it comes to Nick Steeler. It's his abilities out there. His physicality, his ability to win the battles, this and that. That's what defensemen need to do. It's nice to have an anchor defenseman. He doesn't have to be a 50-point rocket shot Matt Dumba to be a good defenseman. He has to be a defenseman first. Defense first, and then add some points here and there. There is skill there. I think he could get, you don't think he can get 21 points in a full season like a Jonas Brodin? Of course he can. And then add more physicality than Jonas Brodin does bring. Jonas Brodin brings skill and this and that and good positioning, but occasionally he's not the best. I think we've noticed that over the course of the years he's been out there. But Nick Steeler, you're seeing a guy who wins battles, and he wins them time and time again, and you don't see a whole lot of mistakes. He was easily the biggest surprise for the Minnesota Wild this season. Just 2 years ago, he almost looked like he was left for dead. He's just a mediocre guy who gets too many penalties and has no offensive ability whatsoever, just a little too out of control with the AHL, this and that. Just 2 years ago, starting things off with the Iowa Wild. Then he improved and improved and improved. Then he came back to the AHL again, this and that, and you're sitting and waiting. And okay, a lot of us are like, okay, Steeler, Susie, can one of them please come up? But no, they can't, because it's all left shot defensemen. You got Brodin, you got Studer, you got, I guess Olofsson. Olofsson kind of, he's a higher ranking guy. You're just waiting for somebody to get hurt, which is kind of sad. Brodin did get hurt, and there was Nick Steeler. And yes, there you go. Now you get to see what Nick Steeler's all about, and he has proven himself to be an NHL player. At least I hope so. How many times have we been disappointed the next year? Oh, but pray to God that will not be the case moving forward. But I do believe Nick Steeler is what he is. He's going to have a nice, successful career in the NHL, 10 years or more, hopefully, and provide that anchor defenseman, that Richard Matvichuk that the Wild haven't had since, Willie Mitchell. Willie Mitchell wasn't a big-time scorer. He was big, physical, right place, right time, and didn't get you in trouble. And that's what Nick Steeler could be, is another Willie Mitchell type for the Minnesota Wild, and that would be bleeping awesome if that's the case. Nick Steeler, the biggest surprise for your Minnesota Wild. An overall, not so successful season, but not a complete failure. It was nice to get to the playoffs 6 years in a row, and you get to 100 points 2 years in a row, and it's the third time in this 6 years in a row that the Wild did get to the 100-point range. Fourth time overall in franchise history, as you had the 100 points years ago, and the Wild did not win the division, but they had that awesome season, awesome record, and then ended up losing to Colorado. It was no, that wasn't Colorado. That was the year before, to Anaheim. Anaheim just put the thrashing on the Minnesota Wild. That was disappointing, but that's kind of is what it is there. Awesome season when you had Dimitra and Gaborik and all that. Awesome numbers, and then the Wild did nothing in the playoffs, but at least they made it. That's just way back about 06-07. So right before paladinolive started. The next year they did. The Wild won the division, but it was a little bit weaker team, and we lost to the Colorado Avalanche in that series. Oof. That sucked. So that's kind of what that is. That kind of puts the wraps on the season. 101 points, 45-26. Nice finish at the end of the year, but still good is not good enough, and I agree with that. And I'm glad that the Wild did make the changes. Chuck Fletcher seemed like a great guy and all that, and certainly made some good moves, but not enough. Good moves. Good is not good enough. And I agree with that once again. So with that, we'll take a quick break and we will introduce Paul Fenton to Brave the Wild. And yes, I have some addenda and errata to do really quick. I didn't get to Pavel Bunet's MVP, biggest disappointment, biggest surprise. So my apologies there. I'm going to do it right now. Just too excited to get back behind the mic and talk about Paul Fenton that I just kept jumping ahead and jumping ahead. I knew I was forgetting something, so here it is now. Pavel Bunet out of the Czech Republic says MVP. Stall because of many reasons. Simply, he was a true leader and he showed the second best scoring season in Wild history. Nobody deserves MVP award more than him. Biggest disappointment, Coyle and Niederreiter. Good call there. Good call there. He says, I believe they both could reach top level sometime, but last season was a shame for Nino and really bad for Coyle. Unfortunately, there is maybe time for a trade. And yeah, I think one of them will be gone for sure. As for who, I don't know. The funny thing that might keep Coyle here temporarily is the fact he's one of the only right shot players on the team, for cripe's sake. So that's a big problem. And I said cripes with a P, so those of you that don't want to hear me cursing, I didn't. Biggest surprise Steeler. So, yep, very much like me here. Biggest surprise Steeler. He was the underdog in almost every team he played. Honestly, I never believed he could become an NHLer someday, but he surprised me in every way. I had a feeling he could be, but yeah, he was quite an underdog, like I was saying 2 years ago. He didn't look like he was anywhere near it, and if he made it, he would barely make it, and he would just be kind of one of those guys that gets penalties every 10 seconds, and that's what he was. And, well, not anymore. He looks awesome, and wow, I'm very happy, very pleased with how things went. So let's talk about the transactions that took place very briefly here, very briefly, if humanly possible. Thought I had them up, and I did. Yeah, they're right here. My bad. So at the end of the day, nothing spectacular, but they're good. But they're they're moves. Mason Shaw. This was, of course, Blair that did this, the assistant general manager for the Minnesota Wild, Ren Blair, before Fenton was hired. Mason Shaw signed a 3-year entry-level contract. Sam Anas re-signed for a 2-year contract, so glad to have Sam Anas back in the fold. Dmitry Sokolov, that's right, and I believe he's a right shot. That would be helpful. Out of Russia, of course, 7th-round pick from Chuck Fletcher, 2016. Dmitry Sokolov, 3-year entry-level contract. Dmitry Sokolov, hopefully finally on his way at least to the AHL, maybe the NHL. Eric Martinson was signed as a free agent, 1-year deal, probably for minor leagues or something like that. Maxim Fortunas, that's an interesting name, came out of Germany. Nope, he left. He left to Europe, so he left the Wild organization. Kaapo Kakkonen out of Finland, 2-year entry-level contract. That's right, Kaapo Kakkonen. Very cool. Draft pick by Fletcher around the same time, about 2 years ago, 2015, 3 years ago. Kakkonen added, so great. Very happy to have him in the fold. He's had some pretty nice success over there in Europe, and yeah, up-and-comer there, about 21 years of age. Improved every year. And yeah, I would not be surprised if Kaapo Kakkonen is in the Minnesota Wild on the NHL roster at some point in the not-too-distant future, possibly after Alex Stalock's contract is over. Adam Vey, who's played a lot of time in the ECHL for the Minnesota Wild with the Loons and, of course, the Mallards, pardon me. I'm getting them mixed up with other teams. The Mallards, the Quad City Mallards, and the Rapid City Rush. Adam Vey is off to Europe with Russia. Adam Vey off to Europe with Russia. Adam Vey is from Turkey, which is pretty rare, obviously, in the NHL. Victor Louv, who was acquired for Berkey and Mario Lucia, he's off to the KHL. Adam Vey is off to the VHL, Russia too. KHL, which is a tougher league. That is where Victor Louv is off to. So, unfortunately, Louv is gone already. That's unfortunate. That didn't take long. And it just shows Mario Lucia, nothing too exciting. Victor Louv is a right shot defenseman, which is of need, but of course, with all the prospects that are probably ahead of him or will leapfrog him in the not-too-distant future, guys like Menel and, of course, Belpedio already made it to the NHL and all that, at least for one game. And we'll see what happens during the summer camps and in the NHL and the training camp and all that into September. Hopefully Belpedio makes the NHL roster. There'll be decisions made there with that. But Victor Louv on his way over to Europe as of May 25th. Paul Fenton had already been hired at that point. I'm guessing Fenton informed both of those guys they will not be signed, so they moved on in other directions. Kokkonen is in the fold. Sokolov, Kokkonen, and nice to have Mason Shaw, who a lot of people did like. He had an ACL injury before last season. One of Fletcher's draft picks in that very strange draft last year where the Wild only had third round and beyond. Of course, Ivan Ladnia also signed a minor league, not minor league, but entry-level contract much earlier to try to bridge the gap with Kirill Kaprizov's agent right there. So a little conversation. That's a way to kind of get things going, get some brownie points with Kaprizov's agent, which is, of course, Ladnia's agent. So that's what the thinking was there. And, yeah, we'll have to wait a long, long time for Mr. Kaprizov. Apparently, it just happened. Nicholas Svedberg is also off to Sweden. So Nicholas Svedberg is gone, which probably means that's Kaapo Kakkonen's job in the AHL next year, which, cool. Kaapo Kakkonen, yep, with Steven Michalik or who knows who else. But I got to think that's what's going on. That's why those guys left, Adam Vey and Svedberg, back to Europe. Kakkonen to Iowa. I would not be surprised at all, and good. Things are coming together. Kakkonen, very successful in Finland. We'll see what he does in North America here, or in the United States at this point. Iowa and ultimately Minnesota. This just happened. Wow, this just popped up. Information popping up right before my eyes here. Svedberg, gone. Former Boston Bruin, and of course, Iowa Wild. Paul Fenton. Who is this guy? Well, yeah, he's pretty familiar. He's been the assistant general manager for Nashville forever. He's been in the organization forever. I started with the organization back in 98. 98. The team started playing in 98. They were the first team of the expansion draft to get started that year, 98. Remember how in 97 was when four cities were named anyway. They weren't their team name wasn't named, but the cities were named Nashville, Atlanta, which is now the Winnipeg Jets 2.0 anyway, Minnesota, and Columbus, which of course Blue Jackets and Wild, duh. But yes, he's been with the organization since the beginning, and that's pretty amazing. He ran the draft, him being, of course, Paul Fenton, from 2003 to 2008, including guys like Roman Josi, of course, Ryan Suter, Pekka Rinne, and others. Done a hell of a job. He was also the full GM of the Milwaukee Admirals for quite a bit of time, at least from 2006 on. That's when he officially became the assistant general manager for the Nashville Predators. Before that, he played in the NHL with the Hartford Whalers. That's got a soft spot for me right there. I love the Hartford Whalers from 84 to 86, 86 and 87 with the New York Rangers, the Los Angeles Kings, 87 to 89, 89-90 with the Winnipeg Jets, the original Winnipeg Jets, known as the Phoenix Coyotes. And then he was moved around and tossed around like a tossed salad in 90 to 91. That's a very familiar year in these parts. Minnesota North Stars were the Campbell Conference champions. Unfortunately, did not win the series, losing 4-2 to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Winnipeg Jets, Toronto Maple Leafs anyway, Calgary Flames, and the San Jose Sharks in his final season. That was the Sharks' first season in existence. So kind of one final year, as that does happen a lot, where a guy is aging and he gets to play on an expansion roster at the end of his career, and that's what Paul Fenton did. Played 8 years in the NHL, more of a gritty fourth-line type of guy, defensive forward, worked his ass off, that type of guy. Daniel Winnick type. So maybe Daniel Winnick will be an assistant general manager or general manager one day in the NHL. Oftentimes, those type of guys have some success, and Paul Fenton has had success, but he never got to become the main guy. He's now 58 years old, but did a hell of a job, though. A lot of talk here. He's always had the ability to identify and all that, identify talent. He was able to acquire Ryan Hartman, Kyle Turris, P.K. Subban, Ryan Johansson, James Neal, guys like that during the course of last year. Philip Forsberg was part of that draft. Mike Fisher, Shea Weber as well. That's a name that would be quite familiar around here. Even helped facilitate a trade with Timo Solani from Anaheim that way back in to Anaheim from Winnipeg way back in 1996. Now, of course, he played or was a scout with the Anaheim Ducks. He was a scout and then chief professional scout with the Ducks from 93 to 98. The Ducks started in 93. Similar situation there where there was multiple expansion teams in the early 90s, just like the late 90s. Ultimately led to the Minnesota Wild and Columbus wrapping that up. But, of course, it started off with the Sharks, and then you move on with Tampa Bay, and then Anaheim and Ottawa joined the NHL in that sense. So 4 teams added there, 4 teams added about 5 years later, and now finally the Las Vegas Golden Knights, all these years later, the Campbell Conference Western Conference champion Vegas Golden Knights could not beat the Washington Capitals despite looking very encouraging in the first 2 games. Things changed dramatically after a certain goaltender named Holtby made a great save, and that was all she wrote there. But Fletcher has known Craig Leopold pretty much since, he started with the Nashville Predators, and since the Nashville Predators started 20 years ago. So a long-standing relationship with Craig Leopold. Fletcher just might end up going to be the assistant general manager with the Nashville Predators. That's a small possibility. With how things go there. No major moves yet, other than, of course, Anderson on his way out from the Minnesota Wild staff, and Evason brought in from the Washington Capitals at one point and was the head coach of the Milwaukee Admirals this past season. He's had some success and definitely a lot of he's well known for Bruce Boudreau as well. A long-standing relationship there, just not as close as John Anderson, because there's your friends, and then there's your best friend, and Anderson was the best friend and is Bruce Boudreau's best friend. So that's the unfortunate side. Interesting thing about Paul Fenton here, which has got me kind of excited, is he's aggressive and he likes to make trades, and he's good at it. He's good at it, first and foremost. Why he hasn't gotten a job elsewhere, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's one of those. He's got a little bit of Mike Zimmer. He's actually the same age as Mike Zimmer. He's not Mr. Smiley, Mr. like, I wear my emotions on my sleeve every second. I'm Mr. King of the media, but he gets the job done. And that's the hope here, that Paul Fenton will do that. Maybe he's just a little bit too honest when he's getting interviewed, but he was able to get into this one. Obviously, the tweaks will be more dramatic than just, again, small little moves. Like, okay, well, we need to shore up the fourth line just in close. There's your tweak. Bada bing, bada boom. Go get the Stanley Cup. Stanley Cup or bust. As the thunder in the background is starting to clap here. Whoa, it's getting dark out there. They're... Sorry, distracted with that noise there. But pretty cool. This guy is the first general manager for the Minnesota Wild, which is U.S. born. So that's, okay. It's not important. It is what it is. Played in Boston University. He is from Massachusetts. You will hear a little bit of the accent there, but it's not as noticeable as some other guys. Of course, when you're in Nashville since 98, maybe your accent won't be quite as strong. At that point, your East Coast accent. But most importantly, Paul Fenton is going to be aggressive. I got to think he will buy out Tyler Ennis, like I was talking about the last couple episodes. I highly doubt Tyler Ennis will be back. Why would you bring him back? His production is not the same. He's another PR Marc Bouchard. He might sign with another team for a cheap contract and play for a little while, and they just send him down, or he gets hurt again, or who knows. God bless him. I hope he doesn't get hurt. I know he's the best friend of Jared Spurgeon, but again, business is business, and if he's not good enough to really be a factor for the Minnesota Wild, then what's the point? I can't imagine a guy with the personality of Paul Fenton keeping Tyler Ennis on the Minnesota Wild roster. That just don't make sense. So I don't expect that to take place. As you continue to bounce around here, somebody's going to get moved here, and that is the talk. Again, I'm very excited about the Kappa-Kokkonen move, though, and understandably. You can just see things coming together here, and that's why Svedberg and Vey are gone, because that roster spot is vanishing quickly. You get a legitimate prospect coming up here in moving up the rankings here and coming to the United States now out of Finland. Something's going on, and I do think Kappa-Kokkonen has a legitimate shot to be the goalie of the future for the Minnesota Wild. He'll be at least the backup, I think. A year from now, there'll be a legitimate chance he'll be the backup. Maybe it's sign Stalock for one more year. I don't know, but Stalock will be a free agent after this season. There's no chance they're going to buy him out. That'd be just dumb. Marcus Foligno, again, though, the contract he signed for 23, for almost $3 million a year with only 23 points. He brings something, but he doesn't bring all that much. Not that exciting of an addition is Marcus Foligno. You wish you could buy him out, but again, that's another reason why Fletcher probably not the general manager of the Wild anymore. Something's going to happen, though, and you even heard Bruce Boudreau say that I do expect something to happen here in the next couple of weeks. Even Bruce Boudreau is expecting it, so something's up. Why would the head coach say that? Yeah, because he's got a feel, and this general manager is going to be interesting to be around. I mean, Fletcher made some splashes, but very few of them were good. In fact, well, none of them were. The Pominville one was nice, but I mean, you gave up. It was constantly giving up prospects, and I don't know. Eventually, draft picks and prospects, just getting rid of them over and over and over again, was not good. Sometimes you got to make a change to the roster, and then that's how you improve the team. You actually just change the current roster rather than dump away draft picks and or the other side of things, dump away players for picks. That's what Mr. Leopold does not want to do. He doesn't want to just trade Coyle away for picks. He wants to trade Coyle for somebody else. Max Pacioretty, somebody like that. That's a name that's out there, of course. John Carlson's a possibility, the Stanley Cup champion Washington Capitals, if the Wild move Dumba, which could happen. The possibility's out there. I don't think a lot of people want the Wild to move Dumba because you're starting to see more and more signs of what Dumba's all about. That's what I'm looking forward to with Dumba's career continuing to progress. I mean, 50 points. And and he played all 82 games. He stayed healthy. He's durable. He was a plus 15. Despite the mistakes, he was a plus 15, which is one of the tops on the team. Jonas Brodin was number 1. Dumba was number 2 on the whole roster. Jonas Brodin plus 23. That's awesome. I wouldn't be surprised if one of Dumba or Brodin was moved. There's a chance that Brodin will be moved at some point, particularly if Ryan Suter's health is looking good. If Ryan Suter's healthy, maybe Brodin does get moved. Susie would move up, or possibly you acquire a defenseman for Brodin, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Brodin for a forward of some sorts. It's tough to give up defensemen, though, because they're hard to replace, unless, again, you really have a strong opinion on Carson Soucy, and it's probably a little too early to say that at this stage. Seems like we're rich with the left-shot defenseman for now, but very quickly it vanishes, where the right-shot defenseman becomes a little bit teeny bit more rich down into the system a little bit, into the fold. Down as you look a little bit further down in the system, we're becoming richer and richer at the right shot. Again, Belpedio, Brennan Mennel, and others along the way. Prosser, obviously, to me, he's a factor, but he gets beat. I mean, he's not spectacular. He brought positive energy to the roster, to the team, way better than what Kyle Quincy could bring. Smarter player than Kyle Quincy. He didn't make stupid-ass penalties. But he got beat on occasion. Clearly, he's not a great player. He's a good defenseman. He's a solid defenseman. To me, he's like a 6th or 7th guy that I think should be on the roster. 6th or 7th, though. And I want to see a Belpedio. Or, if miracles happen, a Brennan Mennel. And, of course, again, you don't want to see any of those guys get traded at the right shot because it's not rich right now. But as things move forward, it can get richer. It can. Left shot, it's tough. You have defensemen in the system that are left shot, but it doesn't look like they're going to move up at any time super soon, and that's the hard part, I think, long term for some of these defensemen out there at the ECHL and such. You also have the other right shot defenseman that has a chance is a guy who's going into his senior year is Jack Sadek with the Gophers. He's moving into his senior year. He's a right-shot defenseman. That shows potential. Not much of a scorer, but could be that physical defenseman that can provide offense, but is generally a smart, solid defender. That's what I do believe Jack Sadek can bring. I don't think he'll be moved. There'd be no reason to. But then again, unless it's your putting him as part of the deal, I suppose. But I don't think Jack Sadek's at the top of other teams' lists of, oh, God, you got to bring him in. But who knows? Maybe somebody did identify him. I'm looking forward to how things go with Fenton. The moves that could be made here. Coyle, Niederreiter. I think Niederreiter's the most likely guy to go because he's a left shot. And there's too many left shots on the roster. This and that. Coyle, I'm frustrated with him. And if you do trade him, you got to get a right shot back. You have to get a right shot for him and Niederreiter. And I would not mind 1 minute if both of them were traded as long as, well, there was an improvement. And, of course, not every general manager is just going to make a mistake and give you the better player every time. So that's the other thing. It may not be the easiest thing in the world to get a suitable replacement for these players, as frustrating as they've been the past couple of years, particularly last year. Every time you think Coyle's going to step up, and it looks like, here we go, he's going to get 30 goals, he steps down. He steps down again, he disappears, or he just miraculously gets hurt once again. Just magically gets hurt, and then you got to sit and wait again and hope for the best. And that's kind of what's taken place with Coyle the last couple of years. He's been in the NHL a while, and you look at Niederreiter, he's already had 7 years in the NHL. That's crazy when you sit down and think about that he's had that much time already with the organization. It's unbelievable. Now, of course, part of it was the New York Islanders. Remember, 1 goal in 55 games. That was unbelievable with me and my buddy Neil Nate Duck Thiesing. God rest his soul. I miss him so much. But yeah, we talked about that at the time when he made that trade with Clutterbuck. Like, hopefully this guy steps up, and he did, but he certainly wasn't spectacular. Nick Boca is another defenseman in the fold with Michigan. He's also a right shot defenseman who's physical. So it's going to be kind of between him and Sadik possibly long term in the next couple of years. Both of them very young. So they were actually both taken in the same draft, which is kind of funny. I'm trying to think of which defenseman it was that I was looking at not that long ago who's going to have a hell of a time. But, oh, yeah, Dylan Labbe. Yep, 4th round pick in 2013. He's a left shot. But, hey, maybe because if guys get moving, maybe it does give Dylan Labbe hope, but he has done a whole lot of nothing so far. Quad City Mallards only 6 points, and 42 games last year with the Rapid City Rush only 8 points. So he's obviously got a long way to go. Even if you're more of a stay-at-home defenseman, I got to think if you're a decent player, your numbers will be better than that at the ECHL level. But who knows? Maybe just coming to the AHL will boost his confidence a bit, bring up the expectations some. But that's kind of how things go right now. It's fascinating. I can't wait. It's like I want to talk about moves, but it's kind of like, well, we're kind of in a sit and wait mode here as we head towards the draft. That's what's good about the season coming to an end, though, with the Washington Capitals and all that. I'm glad it's over in terms of let's get on with things. Jacob Golden is one that encourages me a little bit, intrigues me a little bit, as he had no points the year before with the London Knights of the OHL. He started increasing his numbers a bit as the season progressed. He had almost nothing for the longest time, and he's also a left shot, only 19 years of age. With the OHL London Knights last year. So we'll see what happens with Jacob Golden, another possible left shot defenseman that could help fill things later on, hopefully down the stretch. But maybe it's just a hockey trade where a Brodin for another left shot defenseman. We'll just have to let that develop at this point in time. We'll talk about that more in the off season and as we get to free agency around July. So right now, mostly just introducing Paul Fenton and the possible exciting movements that could take place here coming up. The obvious possibilities. There's even a small possibility Dubnyk for Pekka Rinne, something like that. That would be kind of crazy. It'd be kind of weird, but you never know. Dubnyk, to me, it wouldn't. I wouldn't freak out if he was traded, because as good as Dubnyk can be, I don't think you can win a Stanley Cup with Devan Dubnyk, because I don't think he's consistent enough. I mean, to win a Stanley Cup, I mean, seriously, you're allowed to have a crappy game or two here and there. Like, Holtby wasn't perfect. Heck, he didn't even start the playoffs as their goalie. He was so disappointing. And possibly the backup goalie with Washington could be in the Wild's, at least according to Russo, could be in Paul Fenton's plans. We'll see what happens there. It was a Browner. But Dubnyk, to me, again, consistency. He has good moments, but then it's just, here come the playoffs. He'll have a couple good games, and he was good for the Wild for the series, so except for the final game, whatever. At that point, the Wild were finished, kind of like the Cleveland Cavaliers last night. Oh, God help me. Check out Timberwolves Explosion. I'll be recording State of the Timberwolves pretty soon as well. Probably about the same time these shows will be popping out, hopefully. Oh, God. Oh, I hate the Warriors, but it is what it is. I mean... What do you do? The Wild looked like Cleveland against Golden State in that fifth game. But Dubnyk, to me, is not consistent enough to win a Stanley Cup with the Wild. Maybe I'm wrong, and you can disagree with me all you want. It doesn't mean I'm not a Wild fan. It means I want to win really bad, and I'm just creating conversation here. You're welcome to talk to me. Facebook.com/Brave the Wild or @Brave the Wild. And, of course, there's Facebook.com/MNW players as well. I'll probably close off everything with that as we talk about the postseason in segment number 3. But I don't know. I mean, there's going to be moves, but I don't think it's going to be insane. Like, we're going to have a different goalie. We're going to have, like, 3 different forwards, 3 different defensemen. It's not going to be that crazy, but there will be a significant move. What it is, oh, boy. It's just, you want to speculate. You want to talk about it, but at the same time, it's really hard to say. Ferreira also, though, added. Ferreira, former Minnesota North Stars general manager. Isn't that crazy? Back in the day, in the late 80s, Ferreira brought in to help things out here with Paul Fenton. He's one of his senior advisors, and that's basically what he is. At this point, will he be the assistant general manager? Possibly, but he is the senior advisor at the moment. Brent Flair, still the assistant general manager with the Wild. Love the guy. I think he's very good. Unfortunately, his chances of returning are very slim because every general manager has his guys. Like I would have my guy as a guy I would always want to bring with me. There's always stuff like that. So Ferreira, very possibly the next assistant general manager for the Wild, at least in the early goings here. But unfortunately, boy, I feel bad for the scouts that have to do all the draft and then, okay, by the way, now you're done. You know, that's sad, isn't it? But that's business, isn't it? Right now, when it comes to the NHL draft, the Minnesota Wild will pick 24th overall. And a lot of mock drafts have the Wild picking Akil Thomas out of Niagara for the, Niagara OHL at this point. Bigger guy. Well, not big. He's not big, but he plays big, whatever that means. He's 5'11" and a quarter of an inch. He was born on January 2nd, 2000. So literally born in the 2000s. So congratulations there, right? So now we're finally getting into the 2000s for NHL prospects. That is insane. Makes me feel ancient because I remember 2000 so well. I was already an adult. Something that's extremely important, though, about Mr. Akil Thomas, he is a right shot center. Right shot. And any type of center right now that can play, yeah. So I would not be disappointed if the Wild end up taking this guy. Hopefully he works out. I mean, I don't know. I mean, do I know a whole lot about Akil Thomas? No. So I'm not going to tell you I do. I'm not an NHL expert. But the fact that he shoots right, that's helpful, for one. And, well, what they say about him on draftsite.com, it doesn't sound too bad. He likes to work in the corners and all that. He's extremely fast. And the Wild needs speed because the Wild slowed down big time. He's also able to get through traffic, this and that. So that's where things are encouraging. His low center of gravity makes him, well, really good in traffic. They can't knock him off the puck. So that's good. Very good hands. Yeah, so watch him go like 10th overall instead of slipping to 24th. But, well, we'll see. If he's anything like they're saying, he sounds like he'd be a hell of an addition to the Wild. His defensive game is all right. Basically, it's like decent. It's not great, so that might be why he'd slip a bit rather than be a top prospect. But mock draft after mock draft has this guy coming to the Wild, so that's interesting. We'll see what happens. He's on the Niagara Ice Dogs at the moment, and I would love to have him. He's originally from Canada, so they don't actually say what city, unfortunately. But would be nice to have a player like this. Obviously, I mean, center is a position that is beyond of need. Of course, goaltenders like common sense, this and that. You have a starting goalie, you have a nice backup, and you have a possible goalie of the future in Kaapo Kähkönen coming to the AHL now, which is extremely exciting. So after that, center. I mean, what do you have at center? Eric Stahl is in his mid-30s almost. He's in his early 30s, pushing his mid. Koivu is in his mid-30s. And Koivu's not that good anymore. After that, I mean, well, you have Joel Eriksson Ek, who has shown no scoring yet, but incredible defense. Like, he's about as good a defensive center as you're going to get. After that, well, okay, woohoo, Justin Kloos. He's not bad, but he's fourth line. So, or Matt Cullen, who's going to be 42. So, okay, let's get some centers. And, yeah, I would not be disappointed if this is the guy, as long as he pans out, and that's what the Wild need in the biggest way. If he's big, if he's small, the speed is what's really encouraging, and maybe there you go. There's your Kaprizov type player to add to the mix. Hopefully another Kaprizov type, which would be a nice addition. You're not necessarily hearing a whole lot of scoring, though, which could be like Joel Eriksson Ek again. Speed, though, I'm sure he's faster than Joel Eriksson Ek. But he sounds more like a Granlund, actually. He's able to thread the needle, make really incredible passes through seams and through traffic. Tireless forechecker, so that's good to know. So we'll see what happens with things here. Needs to get stronger, though. Only 177 pounds. Remember, Brodin was real thin, and that's still why he's not a real physical guy. He's a bit on the light side. So this guy also only 177, so needs to add some bulk and some weight during the course of the next couple of years here as he develops in the OHL and ultimately to the AHL and beyond, hopefully, in Akil Thomas. But odds are you almost never wind up with the guy that's a mock draft in the NHL unless you're in the top 5. That's about it. It's always completely different. We'll see. We'll see. Hopefully it works out, and if he's the guy that he does work out for the Minnesota Wild. But at least we have a first-round pick this year. Thank God in heaven. We don't have a second-round pick, but we get the first pick in the third round. So, good. I believe that's from the Vegas Golden Knights with the whole Alex Truck trade. So, we'll let that thing play out as it does. Paul Fenton, I'm excited, I'm encouraged, and, well, yeah, we're looking forward to it, and that'll probably be the next show as some of the moves start to happen with that. So we'll take a break here. We're going to talk about the postseason and wrap up State of the Wild 2018. Back here on Brave the Wild, segment number 3. Just going to look at the postseason a little briefly here to wrap things up for the season. And then, of course, we jump into the draft and free agency next episode. That'll be fun. Most likely a draft review. And, of course, talking about free agency preview and maybe stuff will already have happened. Who knows? But, yeah, it's nice to be back on air, though. It's just nice to get a show back, of course. And, yeah, it's kind of an important one here. State of the Wild 2018. It's always a pleasure. Always so much fun. Yes, the Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup. But how did they get there? How did the Vegas Golden Knights get there? All that good stuff. Pretty impressive start for both Vegas and San Jose. I remember we talked about that. They both swept their opponents. Nashville barely survives Colorado. Nashville could not get past Winnipeg. The Winnipeg Jets looked just about unbeatable, despite the fact the Nashville Predators kept coming back, but they kept having to come back. They never would take the lead. Winnipeg ended up ousting them in 7 games, as you may remember. Vegas Golden Knights, well, things looked unbelievable. I started calling them the Philadelphia Eagles of the NHL, the team that everyone was kind of like, yeah, they're good, but they'll probably lose, in the first round to the Kings, which I thought was going to happen. They sweep them, which was insane. Then they get past the Sharks fairly easily, much to the chagrin of some of my friends there. Of course, Chris and Drew Bunting and some others out there. If Drew Bunting happens to be listening, Chris maybe is, maybe not, of Teal Town, of course. Teal Town, USA. That's a San Jose Sharks podcast. The Sharks looked a lot better this year than last year, that's for damn sure, but they ran into a Vegas Golden Knights team that they played with each other, and boy, that didn't sound right, but they played together is what I'm trying to say. They really played together, and they're just, everybody's backing each other up, and that's basically what finally was going on in Washington. Obviously, incredible talent there. They finally got past the Pittsburgh Penguins, and you know what, I was rooting for them, but then it's like, wait a minute, though, watch them win the whole thing now, because look how good they've been all this time. And then they finally did. Washington ended up kind of hanging on. They ended up going down 3-2 after a great start against Tampa Bay. They start 2-0. Tampa Bay wins 3 in a row, and that's what happened years ago when the Tampa Bay Lightning went on to win the Stanley Cup. Many, many, many years ago, back in 2004, if I remember correctly. Yeah, way back in 2004. And then there was a recent one as well where Tampa Bay came back and beat them. They went to the final and lost to the Chicago Blackhawks, much to my chagrin, back in 2015, the Tampa Bay Lightning. But Pittsburgh basically has owned the Washington Capitals most of the time, of course. Washington looked like they were going to lose the opening series to the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, the Blue Jackets were up 2-0. So quite an amazing feat for Washington, able to survive all the slings and arrows that were coming their way during the course of the postseason. Quite an amazing run indeed. Something's all screwed up here, but I'll just continue. I don't know why they... Well, it was Washington over Columbus. It's not even showing it, but I do remember it very well. Boston, of course, beating Toronto in 7. Tampa Bay went right past Boston like they weren't even there hardly. A lot of people are like, yup, that's Tampa Bay. Now they're going to end up winning the Cup, or maybe Vegas and Tampa. I would have loved that for a finals. The NHL would probably want Washington and Vegas if Washington did survive Pittsburgh. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Washington did end up finishing the job after going down 3-2, taking a 2-0 lead, losing the next 3. Every Washington fan was like, oh, here we go again. Ronald Reagan style, there you go again. And, well, in terms of that, there you go again. And Tampa Bay ended up not getting the job done. Washington ended up kicking their butts 4-0 in game number 7. And it's like, okay, well, you got the two most exciting markets available at this point. A lot of people were like, oh God, just imagine that'd be a troll job, Winnipeg versus Tampa. But not necessarily. Obviously, Winnipeg, an extremely strong team. They looked like they had it. They were pounding the Vegas Golden Knights early on in the first game, and then they ended up winning 0 games the rest of the way, which is quite impressive. And it's like, you know what? Las Vegas is going to win the Stanley Cup. They have home ice advantage and all that. Washington always chokes, even though this time it doesn't look like they're going to, but they always choke just because. And if Vegas can get past Winnipeg, everything's going to be just fine. It was a back-and-forth game in that Stanley Cup final, the first game. Back and forth. So amazing to watch. So much fun. And most of the series was so much fun at the end of the day. But the Vegas Golden Knights continued to just retake the lead. They went down actually for a point, 3-2, ended up coming back, taking the lead. And they just would not relinquish it, and they end up winning the game. And it's like, yep, see, told you Vegas is going to win the Stanley Cup. They get 6 goals against Braden Holtby. Wow. Outstanding. Though, of course, Washington got 4 goals against Fleury, which hadn't been happening earlier. There were a lot of 2-1 type of games against Winnipeg and such, and the Sharks and such, and the Kings. You could go on forever. Very low-scoring games against a team that just plays strong, solid team defense. There's no elite stud defensive player, but you do have Carlson, who's a 43-goal scorer, and Eric Halla, Alex Tuch continuing to emerge, looking like a future good player. I can't say star. Some people might use that word. He has skills, but is he a star? I don't know. But we'll see. He's obviously super duper young, and he's doing more than Luke Cunnin. And that's, again, I know, too soon with the injury. It's not about the injury. It's before the injury. Alex Tuch so far has been doing more than Luke Cunnin. But then again, earlier in the season, Alex Tuch hadn't been showing so much. And I remember last year he looked so soft. But the hope is that, again, similar situation could happen here with Jordan Greenway, where he looked kind of soft early on. And then when he started to get in the action a bit more, you saw a little bit more toughness, but you saw the skill come out. Most importantly, you saw more skill come out with Jordan Greenway. And that's the hope there. So hopefully the Wild end up coming out okay. Sure, you lose Alex Tuch, but at least you still have Greenway, this and that, and others. Greenway wasn't going to be available, luckily for Vegas anyway, but still, unless you trade him. And, well, that's what the Wild did with Alex Tuch and blah, blah, blah. Eric Halla, amazing season. But then things just completely went Washington's way the rest of the series. It was kind of like after the North Stars took a 2-1 lead. Those of you old enough to remember the 1991 Stanley Cup Finals, when we like to call it the finals rather than the final. In fact, I still like finals more, but that's just me. Maybe more than just me. But they took the 2-1 lead, and then as Stuart Gavin once said, it didn't just slip away. The bottom went out of the rink. I mean, he couldn't believe it. Or was that... or was it Basil McRae? It was one of those two Bash brothers there. I believe it was Stuart Gavin that said that. I still remember that old video. Still love that video, Shooting Stars. But the bottom went out of the rink for Vegas. And it wasn't necessarily like they played poorly. It's just Washington was just that good. And Ovechkin was just that determined. And any type of team play that wasn't there earlier in Ovechkin's career was completely different. He just, Michael Jordan years ago just kind of played a one-team game, and the Detroit Pistons beat the hell out of him. He was a little too thin at the time, and he did not play a team game. He just kind of figured, okay, I got to do this myself, this and that, and the Pistons beat the shit out of him. Pardon my French. I didn't even mean to say that here, but I guess I'll let that one go. Then Michael Jordan bulked up, and all of a sudden, mysteriously, he started playing a team game coming out in the 91 playoffs, and things changed, and, well, the Bulls did what they probably should have done a couple years earlier, maybe, and they started winning championships because Jordan was the best player. Ovechkin has been the best goal scorer in the NHL since he started as a rookie. I mean, I kept calling him the Mario Lemieux of hockey right now. I mean, I kept thinking he was the Mario Lemieux. Sidney Crosby was the Gretzky, even though a very different kind of player. Obviously still dominant and a 100-point type of guy, where 100 points a few years ago was unheard of in the NHL. Obviously, back in the 80s, it was like, well, yeah, damn. I mean, Gretzky's pushing 200 sometimes. Lemieux is pushing 200 sometimes because there's a little higher scoring game. Late 90s, early 2000s, things got pretty grinded out. Things were, it's like goalie padding was bigger, this and that. And it was tough to score in the NHL. And there was a lot of Jacques Lemaire, type of defenses all over the league. Teams were copycatting the neutral zone trap, all that, and scoring went down. And then you bring in Alex Ovechkin in the 2004 draft, first overall, and he looks like Mario Lemieux yet more spectacular in terms of how crazy some of the goals he was scoring. Lemieux was a better player. He was a phenomenal, legendary goal scoring, just a phenom that you wouldn't believe. Obviously, he was number 1 overall in the 1984 draft, so about 20-year difference there, yeah. But Ovechkin, again, just looked like the superstar, but then it's like, okay, Washington's record started to get good. You had the Bruce Boudreau era, the Barry Trotz era. Barry Trotz might not even return to the Washington Capitals, which is really weird. You get all his assistant coaches getting re-upped and not him. Strange. And I don't know where to go with that. Maybe Barry Trotz winds up with the New York Islanders, which would be Michael Russo's favorite team. Michael Russo of The Athletic. I hope I said that earlier. He is of The Athletic, and he wants you to subscribe to The Athletic. And, well, it is cheap, so might as well do that. I mean, I need to get my butt on that like today. I'm not doing an advertisement for them. It's just I like it. Michael Russo. Oh, poor Chad. I love Chad on Minnesota Wild Hardcore. What a great guy. I just love Chad Walski. Bringing information and all that. And then Russo found out. That sucked. So I shouldn't even be saying this, but that sucked. But it's public. I mean, Chad made it public to us on Minnesota Wild Hardcore. Russo got mad. Oh, Chad, I love you. Chad Walski, great guy. I think he's a listener to the show. Obviously, massive Wild fan and all that. Man, that was you just helping us, giving us a chance to read some awesome articles from Michael Russo. And Russo's like, hey, man, if you want me to stay employed. But, okay, look at me going all over the place here. The whole point is that Ovechkin started playing a more team game like Michael Jordan did later in his career, and things changed. Maybe Washington wins a couple Stanley Cups, just like the Pittsburgh Penguins won a couple Stanley Cups when they just started finally breaking through again. Guys were staying healthy, like Crosby kept getting hurt, this and that. And they found a good team put together, and they won a couple cups in a row. Maybe Cullen goes back for one more year. I kind of doubt it, but maybe. But Alex Ovechkin really played in amazing playoffs. Looked more and more like a team guy than he ever was, and you're seeing so much passion out of the guy, and it felt good seeing him hold the cup, even though I was completely, and I mean 100% in support of the Vegas Golden Knights. I don't care if they're the first team in the end, the first. They're just in their first season, and gosh, they already usurped us, and they already have a better season than our best season and all that. Whatever. And yeah, they got Eric Hall and Alex Tuch. Whatever. That's fine. I still cheered for them. I still like the Vegas Golden Knights an awful lot. It's cool to have Las Vegas in the NHL. I love their uniforms. Those of you that don't, I don't know why you don't like them, but I do. Washington Capitals, I like how they kind of went more retro. I hated the uniforms they had in the late 90s and early 2000s in the Ole the Goalie era. But awesome to see a team, a city that's had the Washington Nationals make the playoffs just about every year in baseball, and they can't even get out of the first round. They can't even get to the NLCS, National League Championship Series. Washington Bullets never do jack except for 1978. They finally won it all. They got back and lost to the Seattle Supersonics in 79. You had the Washington Redskins, who have had success. So it's not like Washington never wins anything. But it's been a long time, and the Washington Capitals had never won anything. And the 44-year drought is over, which then puts the pressure on Minneapolis, Minnesota. And, of course, you could say St. Paul because of the Wild. Other than the Minnesota Lynx, which I'm sure a lot of you like, but you do recognize it's not a major pro sport. It's not. It's like it is, but it's not. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, but... Yeah, the pressure's on us now. I mean, Cleveland even has a championship recently with the Cavaliers. The Houston Astros are a team that ended a massive drought last year for baseball. The Chicago Cubs, yeah. So, but then again, the city of Minneapolis and St. Paul, the Twin Cities, are now pretty much in the pressure cooker in terms of like, well, where's your championship? I mean, even Seattle, won the Super Bowl recently. They had the Sonics in '79. Phoenix, the Arizona Diamondbacks won in 2001. So, yeah, you could go on forever. Oakland Athletics won in '89. So that's kind of further back than the '91 Twins. So at least that, but it's freaking California. They have 1 million championships, the 49ers and all that. So, yeah. Where am I going with this? I don't know. I'm happy for the Washington Capitals. I'm happy for their fan base. I'm very happy for Ovechkin, Nicholas Backstrom, TJ Oshie. Very, very emotional. His father has Alzheimer's, and he's struggling, with memory problems. Obviously, that's what Alzheimer's is. TJ Oshie, very emotional after the game. He has Minnesota ties. He's not from Washington. He's not from Minnesota. He's from Washington State. So, but he has Minnesota ties, does TJ Oshie. And, of course, he was famous for that spectacular goal, shootout goal in the Olympics a few years back, 2014, if I remember correctly. Yep. So Minnesota ties with Oshie, but again, not major. Not from here necessarily, but very emotional moment for him. Would love to see him suit up with the Minnesota Wild. He's been outstanding since going to Washington from St. Louis. I thought in St. Louis, I thought he was overrated. He goes to Washington and he looks awfully damn good. An excellent team, John Carlson, which might be a possible Minnesota Wild free agent signing, possibly, or a trade partner, so to speak, in a hockey trade. If the Wild end up moving Matt Dumba, which would be interesting. That, of course, being Paul Fenton doing that. We'll just have to wait and see how things go with that. But again, very happy for Washington. Disappointed Vegas didn't win, but it just kind of is what it is. I feel terrible for the Vegas Golden Knights because you never know if they're going to get back. You just never know. Certain players on the team, I think they will. They might even get Carlson from the other Carlson from the better one, William Carlson out of Ottawa. There's rumors about him possibly going there, and that would be unbelievable. That would be unbelievable if Carlson got there from Ottawa. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. About the best defenseman there is in the NHL. Man, if that happens, well, there it is. And maybe Vegas goes back. But hockey's crazy. And that's why I talked about Devin Dubnyk maybe not being a Stanley Cup goalie, because too many hot and cold stretches. I mean, a hot and cold game is one thing, but cold stretches is why you don't make it. And then when he is hot, magically the team isn't scoring, kind of like the Twins right now with a great pitching staff, but no scoring. Just drives you nuts. So that's the hope of the Minnesota Wild, hope to win the Stanley Cup in the next few years here while we're still strapped with these contracts, which could be 7 more years, obviously, with Parise or Suter, unless miraculously they waive a no-trade clause and wind up playing for the Washington Capitals or something. But we'll just have to let that happen if it does. With that said, well, it's been awesome coming back. My first show in Golden Valley again. Different place, obviously, than before. 3 years ago when I left Golden Valley for Brooklyn Park. Hopefully the audio setup is okay, because it's always going to be a little bit different. It's a different setup, different place, different this, different that. Hopefully things sound okay. Any complaints, please let me know on the Facebook page, of course, or Twitter account, at Brave the Wild, facebook.com/Brave the Wild. A shout out to Pavel Burnett, who also posted on my page with the season wrap-up. Him and Merrick Skyba also have a website called mnwplayers.com. mnwplayers.com, I encourage you to go there. They cover everything from Eric Stahl down to the ECHL's Dylan Lobby or something like that, all the way. They cover everything regarding Minnesota Wild, the Kappa Kakkonens of the world who are in Finland. You get the picture there when I'm talking about that. The whole system, the NHL players, and the entire farm system, which I just love keeping up with. So naturally, we're going to make good friends in that sense. And they let me be an admin on their Facebook page, which is facebook.com/MNW players. All this information will be in the show description, including my email address, paladinolive@yahoo.com, paladinolive@yahoo.com, which is where I'd like you to send a audio submission. If you'd like to have your voice on this show, simply record your treat it like a phone call. Use your cell phone or smart device, whatever it is. Treat it like a phone call. Free recording application on every single one of these devices. Just use that. Keep it from 3 to 5 minutes, something like that. Save it and send it to paladinolive@yahoo.com. Again, it will be in the show description for copy and paste purposes. And the other final route is the phone line, 209-736-7877, 209-736-7877. It is a voicemail. Do treat it as such. Mention you're calling in for Brave the Wild, and do your statement, shout out, comment, question, and opine. And of course, you'll be on the air with me. That would be spectacular. With that said, want to thank you again for listening. Please tell your friends about this show. It's be greatly appreciated. Write a positive rating on iTunes if you could. Also, if you also can jump in and write a positive rating on Stitcher, something like that would be greatly appreciated as well. It just only helps the show, encourages other people to listen, and I can only be so grateful for that, and thank you again so much in advance for that. I'm not sure if I mentioned this on the last show. I'm guessing I hadn't seen it yet, but I did get a positive rating on iTunes recently from Anthony Says. Anthony Says, S-E-Y-Z, Anthony, yeah, it's all the same there. And Thank you very much. 5-star rating. He said, just searched for a Wild podcast, and I was happy to run across Brave the Wild. Awesome job keeping up. And thank you so much, Anthony. I really appreciate that. So huge shout out to Anthony there. Thanks again for that. And those of you out there, please do continue. Please write a positive rating if you could. It only helps the show, makes it grow, and of course, just encourages other people to check it out rather than just think, nobody rates this show, no one seems to care about it, so, then they go in a different direction. I'd prefer you come to this show than somebody else's, even though, hey, it's all a matter of opinion, what you like, what you don't like. So with that, it's been a pleasure. It's great to be back behind the mic again. I hope I wasn't too rusty. I hope I'm not slurring my speech a little bit because I get kind of hot in here and I'm just a little bit too excited to talk. So maybe I'm talking too fast and then I'm slurring my speech a little bit because I'm a little bit goofy and crazy. So apologize for that. I don't think I'm really doing that other than I'm just, very excited to be back behind the microphone again. And just again want to thank you for listening. And we'll be back very soon to talk about the free agents and the draft coming up in a couple weeks.